Stocks, bonds, ETFs, straight out of downtown Chicago. This is Zacks Market Edge.
Welcome to Zacks Market Edge, the podcast about investing in your life. I'm your host, Tracey Reineck, and this week I'm joined by Neena Mishra to discuss how we find our investing ideas. Neena is the director of ETF research. Why do I never get that right, even though I've said it like a gazillion times. She's on the ETF side. I'm on the stock side. We're going to discuss how we find those ideas, or some of our ideas at least, through newspapers and magazines. Because I've been getting some tweets lately from people asking, what kind of books they should be reading, where can they find ideas, and I'm going to cover books in a different episode. Mm-hmm. But I feel like newspapers and magazines, yes, you can read them online. They don't have to be in paper versions. Those two areas are a good source of where I get a lot of my ideas. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to discuss it. And let's start with the newspapers, because those kind of get overlooked, I feel.
Sure.
Now, the first one everybody would be reading or looking at is the Wall Street Journal. And I think people should read that newspaper. It's an excellent newspaper, but everybody's reading it. So if I want some ideas, everybody else is going to have those ideas too, I feel. But what do you think about that?
So Wall Street Journal is very important if you are in the market. It's all the economic news, political news, market news. So for people like us who are watching the market every day, every hour, Wall Street Journal is, of course, a must. Yeah. So, and some people think that maybe the subscription is very expensive, but they have promotions very frequently.
They do. Yeah.
And if you are a student, you can get it at a discounted rate.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So those way you can, and of course they have some free articles every month. But if you want to read about a company's results, conference calls, latest developments, then of course Wall Street Journal is a must. But as you said, it's very popular. Everyone reads it. So maybe you are not getting very innovative ideas from the Wall Street Journal.
Right. You're getting much more kind of the reactive type of ideas.
Exactly.
At that source. Okay, what about one of our other favorite ones? It turns out you and I both think this is like one of the best newspapers, is the Financial Times. It's kind of a secret.
Yes. So Financial Times is great for thematic ideas.
Yeah.
So if I want to research what's happening in the field of robotics, artificial intelligence, space, or fintech, I go to FT.
Yeah.
And another area where FT is very good, I found, is their coverage of international economies. So, for example, what was happening in Turkey and Argentina, the economic crisis in those countries. And if you want to learn about what's happening in monetary policy in Russia or in India,
it's a place to go.
Yeah, I go to FT. And one of the reasons I think is FT probably has only one version. I'm not 100% sure about that. Whereas the Wall Street Journal has several versions. So it has a US version, then
and
it has
Asia. Then
many international versions.
Yeah.
It has China, India, Japan, Europe. So probably Indian affairs are covered more in the Indian version, and the Chinese, what's happening in China is covered more in the Chinese version. Yeah. But in FT, you can get a very good, very detailed, update of what's happening in those countries. So if I want to research my international ETFs, I usually go to FT. Now I was...
Our producer just raised his hand and we were like, are we halting? Is something happening? No.
We are fine.
That's funny. So ETFs, I feel like, because they do cover the international scene so well, that you might get a lot of good international type of ETF ideas off of FT.
Yes. So for example, when I was looking at a fintech ETF. FT was my source.
Okay.
And I learned about what is happening in China and India in the areas of fintech. The people are using apps like Alipay and Paytm in India. So there's a payment revolution in those countries. And in fact, in terms of fintech, China and India are probably ahead in terms of
Yeah,
number
for sure.
number of users than many other developed countries. So that is why in terms of at least fintech, those countries are ahead. So they have gone from cash directly to digital payments, whereas we went from cash to credit cards, and now we are switching to digital payments. Then similarly, in the area of robotics, when I was researching, I learned some cool things, like there was a robotic hotel in Japan that was the first entirely robot staff hotel.
Wow.
Now, what was cool about that is that after reading that, I realized, okay, our jobs are not going to be taken away anytime soon, because they had a staff of about 200 plus robots, and they had to fire half the robots because they were not working properly.
What? Even the robots didn't work
Yeah,
out?
what happened? One of the guests complained that his digital assistant was bothering him at night and asking him to repeat his requests. So then they later analyzed, and they found that maybe because he was snoring, so the robot could not understand whether he's making a request, or he's just
making some noises.
Yeah. So they had to fire the robots, and now it has some human stuff as well. Similarly, when I was researching the space ETF, there was a new launch recently. The ticker is really cool, UFO. So of course, space, it always captures your imagination, and I read about space, but I did not know so much about the space economy. And FT had very good articles and some special issues on the space economy, what is happening in terms of space travel, what is Richard Branson's company doing, and Elon Musk's SpaceX, and Blue Origin by Jeff Bezos, what all those companies are doing. There's another Japanese company, a startup, which has developed a technology to create meteors on demand. But all those are, privately held companies, but they are partnering with public companies in the space. So there were some cool things about the space economy, and that probably convinced me about, probably the ETF is a good idea. It would do well in the longer term.
What's the robotics ETF ticker?
The cheapest one is by iShares. The ticker is IRBO. They are more ETFs by GlobalX and RoboGlobal. Those tickers are ROBO and BOTZ, Robo and Bots.
Okay. And what about the fintech one? Because I really like that area.
FINX, fintech.
Oh. X as in exit?
X, yeah.
I don't know what X is.
FINX,
and
yes.
That's a global one?
It has a lot of global exposure. So all
Okay.
these thematic ETFs, because they are based on global growth stories, not just confined to the US. So they usually have about at least 30, 40, 50% international exposure. And probably for thematic ETFs, for thematic, investing, ETFs are a good vehicle, because otherwise you'll have to go out and buy international stocks, which is not easy, or maybe restrict yourself to the ADRs which are traded here.
Right.
So in the ETF wrapper, you can get a lot of international exposure easily and at a cheap cost.
Yeah, that's why I like them. Okay, I'm going to take a look at some of those. Now, Financial Times, is that in Singapore? Where are they located?
London, I believe
they
it's
are in London?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Why did I think they were in Singapore? They probably have an office there, though.
They might have an office.
Yeah.
But they're British.
Okay.
And in fact, because I'm reading about the Indian elections now, so there was a good article in the FT recently about how WhatsApp is being used, not only by, people in spreading all the political, messages and everything. It is actually being used by political parties also, especially the ruling party, Modi's party, BJP, is using WhatsApp for spreading their political agenda. And WhatsApp now has 300 million users in India. It is the single biggest country for WhatsApp. So that probably convinced me about Facebook's outlook in the longer term, because
Right.
Zuckerberg is also talking about moving away from the public platform to more private messaging and private payment system. So obviously, if they are able to, control the spread of misinformation and fake stories on these platforms, then probably this has excellent growth potential in countries like India, Brazil, where it is being used by a lot of people as a cheap form for communications.
Is Facebook included in like a fintech ETF usually because of WhatsApp?
If I'm not sure if
Maybe
it is,
not yet.
I'm not sure if Facebook has, and if it would have probably have a very little exposure, and
because
they have not monetized WhatsApp right now.
We've talked about that, about how they are trying to do payments through it, at least in India.
Yes.
For this reason, because it's so popular there.
Right, 300 million users.
We're still waiting to find out.
It's a very powerful platform for sure.
Okay, so that's something to watch there too in the fintech space. People don't consider Facebook to be like fintech necessarily.
Yes, and like other newspapers, FT also has some free articles.
It does, but I always reach my limit quickly.
Yes.
And then I curse it. I'm like, dang it, I reached the limit.
Yes. I do get promotions at times from FT directly or through my American Express card. Also, I have gotten, so I have subscribed whenever I get any promotion, because FT is definitely a good newspaper. It's slightly expensive, and they don't have as many promotions as.
What does that mean? What is slightly expensive? I haven't looked lately. Do we know? Like, how
I
much
don't
it is?
remember off the top of my head.
I mean, some of them you are talking, several $100s a year to get some of these newspapers.
The Wall Street Journal is definitely cheaper. That I know. FT is one of the expensive ones, but they all have.
It is worth it.
They all have some free stories, and you can sign up for alerts. So, for example, if you're interested in the space economy, you can sign up for alerts. So, whenever they publish an article on that topic, you will get a message, and then you can make use of your free article for the story that you like. And as far as stocks is concerned, I think New York Times also has good coverage in their Sunday version. I like
it. Does the business section?
The deal book is very good.
Yes,
especially for the coverage of IPOs. I think New York Times had very good coverage. In their deal book section.
I agree. Yes, especially if you can only, read like one a week. The Sunday New York Times is what would be the best for finding like investment ideas in there.
Even the technology section is very good. The personal technology section is pretty good.
Yeah. Now, what about Barron's? It's kind of a newspaper / magazine, I guess, because it is once a week, but it's printed on like newspaper type paper. So that's why I was kind of lumping in with the newspapers. But I've gotten plenty of investment ideas out of Barron's over the years.
Yeah, I subscribed to Barron's very recently, so I cannot talk about stock ideas, but they have very good coverage on stocks that I know and that I've seen.
They always have like these good lists, and even I've been getting a couple. I've gone to the bookstore and bought them off the rack, so to speak, and they had one recently that was just on small cap stocks, and they talk to the manager of the fund, and then it gives you like a list of like what the biggest holdings are in there, but you always get some like good ideas off of that.
Yeah, sure.
Especially in these kind of more obscure areas. One of the ones on here that I like a lot, and so I wasn't surprised that she owns it, is Five Below, which is FIVE. It's kind of like the secret retailer where everything's $5 and below, I guess. Yeah. But a lot of teens, they focus on teens and tweens, and they love it. And there's like 750 of these stores now. Oh, wow. I didn't even realize.
I did not realize that they would have so many.
Yeah.
I've seen one, but I have never been in one.
I know, but I need to go to one apparently, because this is like one of the hottest retailers out there. But that was in that list. So yeah, again, I feel like Barron's, a lot of people get it. So obviously everybody's exposed to these same names on here, but it gives you some ideas, especially if you want to put them on your list to kind of monitor and see where they go or how they do in an earnings season and that kind of thing. So Barron's is pretty good. Okay, so let's switch over to the regular magazines. Yes, some of us still read these. Now, I'm been a long-term subscriber to Business Week back in the day. Business Week actually before the internet, yes, that was a long time ago, but before that really dominated on the news. People actually used to try to trade off of the Business Week issue. They would like try to get it out of the mail early, like at its distribution. There was like scandals about this because they would trade, they would, front run the stocks that were listed in there, the companies that they covered, because people would trade them. Now it's less so, obviously, because things just come online and you can't like time it the same way. But it's not owned by Bloomberg. They bought it out numerous years ago, but the magazine has basically stayed the same with its real business focus. And now they have deeper pockets too, I feel. So they too have really good international coverage, which you don't see a lot of times in magazines, especially. And so they had a whole cover story on Amazon in India. That was really good. And then just a recent issue, this really isn't international, so to speak, but they had a whole story on Microsoft and its big comeback. It's been a while since it's been down on its luck, but it's back now. But even if you read like the interior articles, there's always these like interesting ones that they cover because they have the deep bench with so many great reporters over there. And one of them, I knew of this company because we've covered it here many times, and it's one of the bigger healthcare companies, but Intuitive Surgical was kind of highlighted in there a number of months ago. That ticker is ISRG, and they make those Da Vinci surgical systems that are like transforming medicine, really, where the computer is like doing the operation. And the article is like really fascinating about, they talked with the CEO and like the future of medicine. And it was kind of a combination of healthcare plus the technology side. So I knew of Intuitive. I knew why the stock was already soaring and that, how good they were doing with revenue growth. But until I read it and realized, hey, this has even a longer runway, I feel like that's what you can get out of either newspapers or magazines. Like it suddenly like a light bulb goes off and you're more aware of what the company actually does than just reading, their website or listening to some conference calls, because the reporters are like drilling down into more of the, details of what these companies do and like their growth prospects and all of that. So you can get some good ideas. Again, like everybody can read Bloomberg Business Week and it's out there, but sometimes you have to like pick out the ideas. Like that one was kind of sitting there facing you, I feel. But sometimes you can be reading like a random magazine. Like I like Wired magazine for a lot of their tech articles, get some good ideas about like up and coming technologies out of reading Wired. And then one that just happened recently, I get Eating Well magazine. It's a food magazine. It used to be Cooking Light, and then there was also Eating Well. They're only like 6 issues a year or something. And they go a little bit more in depth. They do have recipes and things, but they go more into certain topics in food. So they had one last year on peanut allergies. And so I got some interesting ideas off of that one. But just recently, they had a whole article on the healthiest store-bought veggie burgers. And so as you're reading this article, people might just be reading it for the healthy aspect, but this is like a popular thing, eating now.
Beyond Meat has done so well.
Right.
So did they talk about Impossible Burgers in that article?
Yes. Well, here's like one of the pictures. Beyond Meat is on the list because you can buy this at the Whole Foods and make your own burgers off of that. So if you were thinking like, oh, this is a hot area, a lot of people are going to want to eat these veggie burgers, which are the best ones? And like, which actually tastes good. This burger on here looks pretty good, I have to say. Then you would be reading this article and I immediately was like, where could you invest in these? And then lo and behold, Beyond Meat just went IPO. And now it's crazy. That ticker is BYND, if you already didn't know. But they're on this list. And then they had a couple of others that I wasn't that familiar with. But I knew this one, Morningstar Farms, has one. And I was like, oh.
Those I have tried, and they're very good.
Okay. And I was
black bean burger, their chickpea burgers.
Okay.
They're all very good.
So there's testimony right there.
Yeah.
But I didn't know who makes this, because I know Morningstar Farms, they do a lot of various plant-based foods. And I had to look it up, and Kellogg's actually owns Morningstar Farms. So that's an idea if you were thinking, like, how can I get in this space without spending like $1 gazillion for Beyond Meat? So Kellogg, ticker K, is that one. And then I looked up a few of these other ones. There's Amy's All-American Veggie Burgers on this list, but that's a private label, so you can't buy that one. And then Impossible Burger is on here, and they're also private for now, but they're going to be making the burgers for Burger King, which they tested in St. Louis. I guess it blew it out of the ballpark for the Whopper, the Veggie Whopper in St. Louis. And they're rolling it out by the end of the year to all of their restaurants in the U.S. as long as they can make enough of it. Apparently, they're going to be kind of tight on the supply. But that's a way, possibly, if you think Burger King is going to get like a big boost off of this, you might want to like look into maybe buying the Burger King stock instead of Impossible Burger, which you can't buy. I don't know. That's kind of a roundabout way of investing in some of these trendy things, but it's a way. At least that's what these magazines are for. Like you're reading it to get some ideas.
Sure. As far as magazines are concerned, I like to read The Economist.
Okay,
and
that's a good one.
Economist also has very good coverage of whatever is
Super
happening,
good.
Political,
Yes.
monetary policies, economics,
yeah.
and for researching about recently launched 5G ETF. The ticker is FIVG. Easy to remember.
FIVG.
Yes.
Okay.
So I found very good material in The Economist. I learned that there is actually an international body which sets the standards for 5G, that it has to have this kind of speed, this kind of latent time, this kind of so many devices have to be connected in a particular area, then only it is called 5G. And I also learned about the global race for 5G. So US wants to be a leader, but countries in Asia, especially China, Japan, South Korea, because they missed probably the earlier 4G and 3G race. They were not ahead of the US. So now they are doing a lot, and their governments are supporting. So a lot of work is happening in these countries. Probably they are ahead of the US as far as the 5G race is concerned. But the problem is that the biggest 5G company, Huawei, which is doing so much work in China, is privately held for now.
Right.
So, but again, these companies have public partnerships, probably through an ETF. You can take advantage of those partnerships. Now, as far as magazines are concerned, I wanted to point out that airline miles are a very good way of getting subscription to magazines at times, because your airline miles expire. You don't even remember. If you don't use United Miles for 2 years, they will just expire. So if you don't know whether if you're not traveling, if you're not planning to use your miles for travel, or if you do not have enough miles for travel, probably just look up and subscribe to some magazine and make use of your.
You might even be able to do newspapers through that too.
Newspapers, too. Even the Wall Street Journal, you can buy through your airline miles. So that is a good way to keep your account active and make use of your miles.
Right. There are a lot of different sources. And I do have to say, for those people who are like, no, you're not going to find anything in these, magazines or newspapers or whatever, go stream the movie Working Girl with Melanie Griffith, Harrison Ford. Yes, it's old. It's from the 1980s. Got a whole bunch of Oscar nominations. But in it, Melanie's character finds her ideas for M&A. She was not investing, but trying to, merge them together from the newspaper. So she's like cutting out articles about various radio personalities actually in the film. So I really recommend that. Is a kind of a portrayal of what you can do when you're out there looking around for various investing ideas, and especially ones that, might not be as clear on the surface, kind of like reading the healthiest store-bought veggie burger article and then realizing, hey, this could be real popular with, people wanting to eat much more of this, and how can I invest in something like this? So
This is definitely a growing trend for which Beyond Meat's success just shows us that so many people they want healthier options, and there's so many vegans in the world now. And Morningstar Burgers, because as you mentioned that it's owned by Kellogg's now, their marketing is very good. They are available everywhere. They're available in Whole Foods. They're available in Jewel. They're available in Target. So very easy to find them too.
Okay. I'll have to try that one. Mm-hmm. All right. So we gave you a lot of different areas where you could find investing ideas, and some of our favorites. I'm sure some of you have your own, but be sure to use these sources. Yeah, I know it costs money, but you can get some free articles at least for a while amongst all of them. And then it doesn't hurt to subscribe to get the information, because after all, these are great writers and reporters and whatnot bringing it all. So sometimes you have to pay to get it. Yes. And I do. So let's recap the tickers we talked about here. So one of those was the Five Below for the retail side. That's kind of a small cap retailer that's hidden, and that's FIVE. And then we had Intuitive Surgical on the Da Vinci system, ISRG. And then we had a couple of the ETFs. The space one is UFO. That's easy to remember. One of the robotics ones is IRBO. The FinTech ETF is FINX. And the 5G is FIVG. And then we had a couple of the meatless, I guess. Is that what they're calling it? It's not really veggie. It is just meatless, right? Okay, meatless. And one of those is Beyond Meat, BYND, which is still going strong since its IPO. It's a little crazy for me here now. I'm on the sidelines on that one.
I wouldn't buy. It has gone up too much too soon.
Exactly. So I'm waiting for a pullback on that one. And then Kellogg, which has the Morningstar, is K. So that's another way to play it. And is that everything? I think that covers just about everything. So this has been a good topic because, again, people don't know where to find investment ideas. And I'm going to cover books on another show. So be sure to subscribe so that you can get all of our podcasts here at Zacks as we're bringing you investment ideas. You don't even need to read the magazines or articles. Apparently, we'll bring some for you every week here on all of our podcasts, because Neena has a podcast on ETFs too that you're going to want to check out. What's it called?
ETF Spotlight.
Okay, that's easy to remember. So check out the ETF Spotlight too to get even more ETF ideas. These are all free, of course. And the Market Edge here. And also the Value Investor podcast, where I bring you value stocks every week. That's also a good one for some investing ideas. But you can get them all on Apple Podcast. And the Market Edge is also on SoundCloud and on Spotify. So get us somewhere. And I'll see you again next week with some more investing ideas.